In the design world, there's a bit of a myth that you need the software that's the most expensive, that has all the features in the world, just because you have to. Some of you already know, I don't agree with this. So today, let's talk about what design software is right for you. Okay, so the main softwares we're going to be comparing today are Affinity Designer, Photoshop, and Krita. And the reason for this is that there's a lot of softwares out there. Trust me, there's a lot of softwares, but most of them are related to these three in some kind of way. A lot of the pros and cons of these three software apply to those as well. First thing you need to ask yourself before knowing what software is right for you is, what do you need it for? Like, are you planning on making posters or logos or digital drawing and painting? Are you planning on photo editing or compositing? What exactly is it that you want to do? Because that's very important in figuring out which one is right for you. If your answer is multiple of these, then ask yourself which one is the one that you want to start with, because at the end of this, you want to find the software that fits you the best for your needs, not the one that's the most popular or the one that costs the most. But now that that's out the way, let's talk about what each of these different softwares do really well and what they don't do so well to help you make that decision. So let's start with the big boy, Photoshop. Now, this is definitely something I've used in the past. And a big pro is that it's the industry standard, the one that's mentioned. I mean, it's even become a thing called photoshopping something. It's become a verb, which is really weird, but it's so popular that changing an image is known as photoshopping it. And with it, you have a lot of complicated tools, which is, I'd say, both a pro and a con. Because one of the difficult things about Photoshop is that it does have a high learning curve. And it can be quite difficult and overwhelming, especially to a beginner, in what to do, where to do, and how everything is in the whole software. It's not set out in the best way for new people, but it is something that has a lot of uses, if those uses are what you need. Now, it's probably the best at photo editing in this list, and you can make some graphics within it as well, but Adobe also have Illustrator that you can use to create graphics as well. There's a bit of an intertwine there, but something to be aware of is that it is purely pixel based. So you don't really have the benefit of using things like vector lines and creating things that are going to need to be sized in different ways. But also another pro is that it does have some very simple animation software built into it as well. So if you want to make simple animations, it is possible. It's not that good, but it's possible. But then on the flip side, you also have Adobe's After Effects if you were going down the route of Adobe. However, one of the biggest cons in Photoshop is the subscription model. Ugh, horrible thinking about it. Now, if you've watched my videos before, you know I don't like subscriptions because you're paying a small fee every month for basically the rest of your life. So really, you don't own that software, especially for beginners who, if you're not earning that much money, it's not worth paying that small amount each month to pay for that software over and over again. And we've got a few other ones that we're going to talk about today, which could be better suited for you. But again, it all depends on your needs. If you're going to be a photographer that, let's say, is going to be taking wedding photos and you're already booked up for the next 6 months and you know you've got a massive income coming in every few months, then maybe it is the right one for you. I would say it's more perfect for photographers who want to do something a bit more complicated than the edits that you can do in Lightroom, which is the software designed for photographers. And another downside of it is that the iPad app for Photoshop is very watered down. So if it's something that you're looking into about using on an iPad, yeah, be aware that the app is not as good as some other ones. All right, next up, we've got Affinity Designer. I hold my hands up in saying, I know this is my favorite software, but I'm going to try and not be biased, even though it might sound like it, but it's all true. Now, Affinity Designer is really good at making graphics. Because it is a vector-based program, it is really good at making vector art or things like logos or things that are going to need to be resized over and over again. Now, it is quite simplistic, but at the same time, there's a lot packed into that software. And I feel compared to something like Photoshop, it's a lot more user-friendly, especially to beginners, because things are labeled out a lot easier than something like Photoshop. But not only that, it does run a lot faster than Photoshop as well. I found that there's a lot less lag within the software, even though it's got basically all the same stuff in there. Now, comparing Affinity Designer to Photoshop isn't quite realistic. They are very different software. Affinity Designer is a lot more similar to something like Adobe Illustrator. And another great thing about it is that it's a single purchase price, which means you pay for it once and it's yours to use however you want. Now, they do say that things like large updates may incur a small charge, but you're not pushed to update if you don't want to. You can stick to the previous update and just carry on using it until you're ready to update and pay that small charge, or just carry on as you are basically, but it's your software to keep once you've paid for it. And as of recording this video, they haven't actually released a big update where they've charged everyone for it. So far we're looking good, and the software has been out for a good few years. So we'll have to see what happens. Now, another great thing about this software is that the iPad version, this is why I kind of mentioned it for Photoshop, the iPad version is basically the exact same as the desktop version, meaning it's basically got all the same features that the desktop version has in the iPad version, and it's absolutely amazing. Like, I swear if I get an iPad, like one of those massive ones, it's going to be the first software I'm going to download on it. In fact, I've already bought it, even though I don't have an iPad, just in case I get one. It's seriously that good. But forget about gassing the software up. Let's talk about its downsides. Now, Affinity Designer is not for photo editing, but Affinity do have Affinity Photo, which is designed specifically for photo editing. And another downside of it is that digital painting can be done, but it has its limitations. It can be quite difficult to work with certain tools, but it is possible to do. There might be just extra steps involved in creating what you want to create. And another downside technically is that it's not free. There is a charge, but it's nowhere near as bad as a subscription, in my mind anyway. All right, let's talk about our third one, which is Critter. Now, the reason I picked this one is that there are a lot of painting softwares out there, but this being one of the ones that are free, but it's perfectly aimed at people who want to do specifically digital drawing and digital artists. Like I said, it is free, so that's a huge bonus. And the brushes that are in the software are highly customizable. Like, those menus go on for days. You can customize so many different things to get it working how you want it to work. Now, it does also have the ability of frame by frame animation. Now, this is different from Photoshop's animation software, which works on keyframes. So you move something, you say, this is where I want to move it. You make a keyframe, you move it again, you make another keyframe, and Photoshop knows from here to there, it's going to move within that set time frame. Whereas in Critter, the frame by frame animation is hand-drawn animation. So literally how cartoons are made, where someone draws one frame of the animation fully, moves on to the next frame, draws the next one, and moves on like that. So it is a lot of drawing, but it's designed for people who are drawing. So a huge benefit of this is that if you are looking to be a digital artist of some kind, then it is a very, very viable option to use, especially for the fact that it's free. And who knows, you can always upgrade to something that is paid later on. You don't necessarily have to because it's free. Now, the downside of this is that image post-processing is possible in the software, but it's not really that good. And there's also no iPad version available either. But there are other software like Procreate, which are iPad versions, which I'm not sure if it's free or not. I'll have to look that up. Personally, from what I did, is I started off with a very, very basic version of Photoshop. I think it was called Elements, something like that. But basically it came free with something that we bought at the time. And I quickly realized that it has a lot of the functions of what I needed at the time, but it didn't have everything that I needed. So over time, I used it as much as I could, but eventually I did go for Photoshop, which at the time you could buy for a one-off fee. Good times. And I spent a lot of my time using things like Photoshop and Illustrator because they were the most popular and they were known as the industry standard. But once they became a subscription model, I knew there was something else that I had to use. And that's where I stumbled upon the Affinity Suite. And to be honest, I haven't looked back since because I just absolutely love those software. As you can see, a lot of my channel is based on tutorials about Affinity Designer and hopefully soon about Affinity Photo. Now, over time, I have spent a lot of money on different softwares, but the one that I found most beneficial for my needs only found within the last couple of years, and it actually isn't even the most expensive on my list, but it is the software that makes my life the easiest, so it's the one I'm going to use the most. No matter how many times people say I should use Photoshop or Illustrator, there's no should. If it fits what your needs are, that's the right one for you. So like I said, my advice on anyone looking for what software is right for them is first think about what you want to use it for. And if you're really not sure, then get something for free. There's actually vector-based programs that are free as well. You might have to do a bit of Googling about it, but there's definitely some free software out there that are very, very good. Or even you can use the free trials. Now I know at the Affinity Suite have some really good free trials. And when you're using these free programs or the free trials, think about, are you able to do the things that you want to do? And if you find you're not able to do the majority of what you want to do, it's not the right software for you and you're better off trying something else. But it is sometimes a bit of trial and error, and especially if you spend as little money as possible using free trials to find what best suits you, you'll be better off in the long run knowing you have the right software that fits your needs. And that's what it is. It's all about your specific needs. Just because one costs more than another doesn't automatically mean it's the right one for you. Like buying the state-of-the-art, top-of-the-line laser printer that prints 10 pages a second and has super cool features and costs like £10,000. But you're only going to print off like a 2-page Word document every 2 weeks. Just not worth it. You're better off getting a second-hand printer that you know works fine, like because you're only going to be printing a small amount of paper. I really hope this has helped you get closer to a decision of what software is right for you. I really want everyone to get out of the feeling that they need the most expensive or most popular to be right. I struggled for years with Photoshop and Illustrator because they were the best, and until I found the Affinity Suite did I really find what was best for me. And that's what's important. Find what's best for you. Anyway, that's enough rambling. But what's your thoughts? Or in fact, what's your software journey so far? Have you stuck with one the whole way through? Or have you changed a bunch of times like I have? Drop it in the comments below. It'd be really interesting to know. That's it for this one. Hopefully it helps, and if it did, make sure you give it a thumbs up and hit subscribe if you like these kinds of videos. And of course, the social links are in the description below if you want to follow me on anything. As always, I've been BrownBear. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.